Hey guys, it's Payne. I'm really excited to introduce a brand new show to Bet the Board that combines sports and alternative investing, the very first of its kind. Sports betting and collectibles converging is inevitable. Let me tell you why. Sports cards and memorabilia are another way to get money into the market and do it without limit restrictions or the substantial hold you're accustomed to with sports betting. Whether you collected cards as a kid and are looking to get back into the hobby, this podcast is for you. If you've been collecting cards for years, this podcast will make you think and operate more efficiently. Are you in real estate? The parallels to investing in sports cards and memorabilia are uncanny. You're on Wall Street. Well, listen close. The best sports cards have outperformed the S&P 500 by 6x since 2013. And during the 2008 market crash, sports cards held up better than the S&P 500. Bet the Board, in conjunction with PWCC, presents CardBoard Chat, an entertaining, sophisticated, and informative podcast that combines sports, analytics, betting, cards, and memorabilia. Without further ado, this is CardBoard Chat with Jesse Craig, a leading figure in the collectible space, and me, Payne. March Madness in a few hours from now. Unfortunately, your Ducks are not in. My Syracuse Orange and FSU Seminoles are out after catastrophic seasons. What's the tournament look like for you now that the Ducks are out?
We were close. We had a season that if we would have gotten healthy earlier, I think we would have made it. And if we would have beat UCLA, we're in, right? And I think if we close that game out and it's a close game, I actually think we make it. But we ended up blowing it in the last 10 minutes of the semifinal in the Pac-12 tournament that ultimately cost us, I think, a chance to make it to the NCAA tournament. So the tournament as a whole, I haven't followed college basketball that closely this year. That is an admission. I've been kind of head down with a lot of work stuff. So I don't know. Like when I saw the number one seeds come out, it was a surprise to me. Like I didn't even know who was considered to be a one seed this year. I had no idea. So I'm pretty, outside of the Ducks playing, below average this year, I'm really out of the loop. But this is the time when I start researching for my bracket. So I'm going to be diving in here, probably laying in bed tonight.
I feel like Oregon probably has a case that, they could have made the tournament. I'm just looking at our power ratings right now. They were the 37th best team in the country. So to your point, the slow start probably hindered them a little bit. They're certainly playing like a tournament team at this point. What does the PWCC office pool look like? And I got to ask you this question because apparently he's quite the gambler. Is Brock the odds-on favorite to win the PWCC pool?
Brock did win our fantasy football league. So he likes to spend time on these kind of things. I would say that he's likely the favorite, but I also don't know if he spent as much time following college basketball this year because I just hear rumblings from him that his Butler Bulldogs, which he follows and loves, haven't been as good. And I think that, as long as your team is playing well, you pay more attention to the top 25 and kind of what's going on. So I think with Brock, he hasn't been paying that much attention this year, but we do an office pool. It's fun. Usually about, we're almost up to 200 employees now and about half the employees participate in it. So it's a pretty big, entertaining pool.
I like it. We're going to have to follow up and see how you do on that.
The good news is the Ducks got the one seed in the NIT.
I saw that.
The not important tournament.
Yes, a couple of the bigger brands declined the NIT. I did see that. So,
yeah.
Okay, now on to some more important things here. I know we've talked about it in passing, wanted to chat about it because I know it's coming up in a couple weeks. It's out in Vegas. It's the Mint Collective where you and PWCC will be set up. That starts on the 30th?
Correct. Thursday the 30th.
Okay, beautiful. And just talk to us about some of the things that you guys are going to have going on there. You can submit graded cards for upcoming auctions, both weekly, premier, can submit cards as part of your grading services programs. I believe Beckett, and who else are you guys with?
Yeah, so we have drop off and submission capabilities like we do at every show.
Yep.
We have our authentication partners with NBA, Mike Baker Authenticated, Beckett, CSG, and SGC. So those are the 4 authenticated partners there that you can drop off assets to. If you go online and check out our authentication tab, that will show you the services that they offer and what the expense and the time it takes to get the stuff graded. So we're doing that vault drop offs as well. It's a really interesting show. It's for anyone that's ever been to what they call the industry summit. It's a more elevated industry summit, in my opinion. There's some really good panels. If people who are on this podcast, it's in Vegas. It's at the MGM. If you are still learning about the space, there's a ton of really good information at this show. Where a normal card show, you show up, you walk around the show, you look for cards to buy and sell. This is very informative. There's panels all day on Friday. I'm speaking at one specifically. So there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of this show that you normally wouldn't get at a card show. So if you're in the area or you want an excuse to fly to Vegas, I'd highly suggest coming and learning as much as you can during the weekend.
We'll try to get your panel day and time for people if they want to stop by. The other things that PWCC has going on there, aside from submitting cards for auctions, weekly and premiere, submitting cards for grading, submit cards for the vault as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And that is 100% free, and then everyone has access to them via the app, 360 Digital Imaging. You can access that anywhere, anytime, unlike a bank safe deposit box. You can submit raw cards for MBA authentication, you said, and those can go up for auction as well?
Yeah, they can go for auction. You can put them in your vault. But yeah, anything you submit to the vault is safely secured, digitally archived, and you have access to it from anywhere in the world via pwcc.com.
Beautiful. All right. It's time. We're going to start to get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast.
Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's time, folks. That's right. We're going to discuss undervalued and overvalued cards, or maybe even some memorabilia assets, potentially some players. Is it time to buy, sell, or hold on to these assets or players? We'll give you some opinions and back it up.
You're going undervalued again this week. I am not surprised by your choice. We've talked about him ad nauseum. He is a staple in the NBA, Hall of Famer, changed the game. Talk to us a little bit about your undervalued selection this week, Jesse.
So my selection this week as a whole is Steph Curry. Yeah, I think his performance this weekend, I had him selected before then, but I think his performance this weekend solidified kind of what I'm talking about. I mean, the guy goes for 22 points in the fourth quarter in overtime in just a thrilling back and forth. What a fun game to watch. I know you were traveling, so I don't know if you were able to catch that, but this is why Steph Curry, for me, is must-see TV. He's one of the few guys, I've talked about this before, but there's a handful of guys where if they're playing on TV, I got to turn the game on because I want to watch that individual player. And the Warriors, without Steph, are trash. I mean, it's obvious that he is the key to that team, right? And what's really impressive, too, if you watch Steph, I mean, I'll go over his accolades here in a second, but if you watch him on the court, I wonder if he runs around the court, like if you track the actual like mileage that he has, I wonder if there's anybody that beats him in the NBA. The guy is constantly moving. He's not very big, so he gets, I mean, for him to get open with how much defensive pressure they put on him and game plan for at this point in his career is very impressive. So I love Steph. He already has a 3-point record, 4-time NBA champion, 2-time MVP, 9-time All-Star, 4-time first team NBA. He's a part of the rare 50-40-90 club, 50% field goal percentage, 40% three, 90% free throw. I think for those that are familiar with the space, I think there's a perception that, with his NTRPAs, I think a lot of people look at those and see how much they've gone down and that his market as a whole is down as much as those are, but that's actually not the case. His NTRPAs that were made in 2009, which was the first year National Treasures was made, were not condition sensitive. Over half the cards that were produced for his mainstream out of 99 RPA are Beckett 9.5s. I mean, that's how, non-condition sensitive these things were. They skyrocketed during the peak. Then you saw a ton of supply hit because there were so many out there, and they really took a beating and came back down. But all things considered, when you look at what his cards were and what they are now, I still see there being quite a bit of upside for his cards. On top of the fact, call me crazy, if they stay healthy, I would not want to play them in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Western Conference is really interesting, and had a chance to do the Lakers game on Friday, Clippers game on Saturday, and I'm watching the Clippers, and that's another team that's really interesting just because you're watching Paul George and Kawhi be able to get their shot at any point they want in the half court, and that's ultimately when they pulled away from the Knicks with Jalen Brunson out there, just substantially better in crunch time in the half court where guys can just get their own shot, and there's just not a lot of those dudes in the league. But going back to Steph Curry, I think, forget production for a minute, put the 4 championships off to the side. I think you and I have talked off air about this, but I just believe players that change the game always and forever should be viewed in a higher light. And, I noticed some, the NBA started to get a little boring because every single trip down the floor, it's either a 3 or something at the basket. Analytics has just changed the way the sport's played. But Steph Curry was the guy that helped confirm that 3s are more efficient than 2s, and he kind of helped stamp the fact that mid-range jumpers and post-ups in the paint are some of the least efficient shots in basketball. And really, one of the things you said at the top there was like tracking data. He started cooking around the time tracking data became available, and it just was very much changing the game of basketball. And, I think the way his game is played is also relatable to all of this. I know we've mentioned this on the podcast. Like, we have the ability as undersized, athletically challenged men to get out in a basketball court and heave a 3, right? We're never going to be 6'10" and dunking the ball. Right. So, changing the way a sport is played and being wildly relatable on the court, I think, is where the enhanced value past the production in the ring lies in Steph Curry's market for sure. So I completely agree with you on this one. My card is a couple cards, actually. More of a set, but we'll key on some of the big boys within that set. It's 1986 Topps Football. And I kind of think across the board, the key cards are undervalued, but I think specific players like Bruce Smith and Reggie White are wildly undervalued, especially in PSA 10 grade. You look at that entire set, just littered with Hall of Famers and the best football players of all time. You have Rice, Steve Young rookies. You have lesser rookies like Andre Reed and Boomer Esiason, but just a fantastic checklist. And I was poking around on this on the airplane on the flight back. It was like 5 hours. I was a little bored. I'm like, okay, I'm going to dive into this a little bit. But I think this football set is kind of the twin brother to the 1986 Fleer basketball set with Michael Jordan's rookie and a slew of other key cogs there. I think the stark difference, though, and where some of the value lies, this was shocking to me. 1986 Fleer basketball has 3.5 times the amount of total graded cards, despite having a checklist 3.5 times smaller. So the print and population of 1986 Topps Football is far less, and I think, again, that's where some of the value lies. Bruce Smith's rookie is a Pop 37 in PSA 10. Reggie White's PSA 10 is a Pop 43. I mean, Reggie White's NFL.com second best defensive player ever. Bruce Smith's the all-time leader in sacks with 200. I just think, 1986 Topps Football is one of the best sets of all time. I'm going to kind of, continue with the theme here and practice what I preach. It's March. Football season's over. It's the off season. We're all enamored with, March Madness kicking off here in a few hours. NBA playoff positioning is taking shape. Opening day in baseball about 2 weeks away. Football's, out of sight, out of mind post-combine. And so I think it's my belief here that starting to add some key cards from 1986 Topps Football is probably a positive thing to do this offseason with a long-term frame of mind.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. This is likely one of the top 2 sets in football in existence. You could put probably 1957 Topps up there as well. Some people might argue that the 35 Chickle because it was, the first real football set. But you've got rookie, Steve Young rookie, Reggie White rookie, Bruce Smith rookie. I mean, it's absolutely loaded. And, the Steve Young rookie is not one to shake a stick at either because, we sold one a year ago for $120,000. And part of the reason that, Steve Young's a stud, love him, probably the greatest lefty quarterback of all time. but there's only 9 PSA 10s that exist. So these cards, to find them well-centered, to find them without print issues, to find them without corner issues because of the cardstock that they use is just so hard to find. And that's why you see cards, like the Reggie White also only having 43 10s with over 5,500 cards graded. And like you mentioned also, he's consistently in the top 1, 2, or 3 when you have the all-time defensive greats discussion. And his last 10 sold for only $4,500. I mean, that's criminal.
It's nuts.
That's absolutely criminal. How that is not a 5-figure card is absolutely beyond me. So you make a great case for this being an undervalued set and some cards specifically within it. I know that the Rices and the Youngs, made some big upswings. The Rices have kind of come back down a little bit, but the population is so low on the Steve Youngs. I'd be very interested to see, full calendar year later, if the next one sells soon, what it would go for. But it's a fantastic set.
The Young you referenced, the greatest uniform in the NFL, maybe NFL history. It's like the creamsicle Buccaneers uniform.
Yeah, it's a great uniform for sure.
Pick a number, any number, whatever it may be. We got a number inside, but we want a magic number. All right, this is where we're going to pick a few big cards that enter in an auction over the next couple of days, and we're going to try and guess how much they sell for in advance. Throw out a number. We got one too.
I hate to kick a man while he's down, and I know you were under the weather last week, but 3-0 for the good guy over here. Are you ready to get back on track?
I friggin' hope so. That was unexpected.
I remember towards the end of it, you were a little suspicious. You weren't feeling so great after 3.
I kind of knew the outcome would likely be before the podcast even ended.
Okay. We're going to get back on track this week. 3 great cards, studs, and one modern day player that's been in a little heat recently, and I'm sure that'll create some variance with that pricing. Yeah. But we're going to start with the GOAT, the head honcho, Michael Jordan. We're looking at his 1998 Ultra Platinum Medallion to 99 and SGC Mint 9 grade. The Platinum Medallion series, highly sought after. Talk to us a little bit about this card, the set, the photography, and give us your best guess.
Yeah, so out of 99, this is a very popular brand from the 90s, the Platinum Medallion. These have actually sold the last couple of years more frequently on an annual basis than I would have expected. But, it is a rare card. I mean, it's a card that's only serial numbered to 99. And while it's a popular brand, maybe there isn't enough emotional connection to it. It's a good-looking card. I wouldn't put it in the upper echelon of 90s inserts. But the last sale on this card was actually a couple weeks ago in a PSA 8 for $9,300. Now, the reason I included this one this week is because it's in an SGC holder, right? It's an SGC 9, which it's from 90s inserts. You don't see a ton of them in SGC holders. No a reason other than that, SGC hasn't created a ton of those historically, and I think over time, people will be more familiar with seeing those in SGC holders. But it's interesting from trying to predict the price, right, with an SGC holder on a card like this, because there's not a lot of comps for these in SGC holders. So, doing some math and crunching some numbers, considering the last PSA 8 was $9,300, I've got this one at $7,437.
That's interesting. Okay. To your point here, I think what we saw with SGC is they were kind of getting rid of some of their upcharges through some of their promotions. And this is a card that would definitely get upcharged by PSA. So maybe that was the thinking. They also had substantially quicker turnaround times for, much of the last, I would say all of 2022 virtually. So that's probably why this is in an SGC holder. To your point, I think it maybe becomes a little bit more prevalent. The Platinum Medallion series, just, I mentioned at the top, just highly sought after. The photography is fantastic. If you look all 3 years, their action photos. 1996 was the initial offering. That version isn't serial numbered, but was short printed at 250 copies. 1997, the most popular year by far, that is serial numbered out of 100, and they did another copy called a Masterpiece, which is a 1 of 1. It was Michael Jordan's first ever 1 of 1 card. I know the owner of that. Beautiful card. And then you have the final year, which is the one we're discussing here, 1998 Platinum Medallion. This sold, and I'm surprised you saw that data. You guys sold one out of the vault, best offer, in September of last year. Went a little higher. A BGS 9 sold for $14,300 at the top of the year, and then the PSA 8 that you mentioned a week ago. I just think the Platinum Medallion brand is extremely strong. To your point, though, maybe not this particular one among 90s collectors. It's a horizontal card, and I think this is where you were going with it. It's a horizontal card. It's not vertical like 96 and 97. The image is captured from above, so it kind of takes a minute to identify what you're looking at and which like kind of how you should hold the card. I'm actually going to be a little higher than you on this one, and I'm surprised you came in a little low, but I see the PSA 8 data. It makes me a little nervous because I do kind of think maybe they're on par perceptually right now in terms of like pricing, because SGC's kind of pulled back the last 3 months. I don't feel like they've captured the market the way they should have when they had the golden opportunity, but neither here nor there. I'm going to come in a touch higher than you on this one. I'm going to be at 7,900 on the button.
Okay. I like it.
You're starting again, the middle card here, going vintage baseball, which I love, and a player that we both believe should be in the Hall of Fame, especially now that Major League Baseball is taking advertising dollars from sports books. We're looking at the 1963 Topps Pete Rose rookie in PSA 7 near mint, but it comes with the PWCC Eye Appeal qualifier Superior, which is awesome. And I think a few months back, when baseball wasn't at the forefront, a Pete Rose card made my undervalued list. I believe it was the 1964 Topps with the classic Rookie Cup insignia and, a photograph that I thought featured, an action shot of Pete Rose there. It's why I prefer that card. And I believe, what's kind of keeping the 1963 Topps Pete Rose from like really soaring is, the bobbling heads here. Like just so that's the floating heads, I believe, is what many baseball card collectors call it. And, you have Pete Rose, but it has Pedro Gonzalez on there and Ken McMullen and Al Weiss. Ken McMullen actually had a decent career that carried across 16 seasons. Very good defensive player, won a ring, but this card's value comes from Pete Rose. Again, this specific copy, fantastic for the grade. PSA 7 near mint, but it's dead centered, colors vibrant, registration's fantastic. The back of the card is centered to perfection as well, and that's again why it comes with the Superior Eye Appeal stamp, meaning it's in the top 5% of all near mint Rose rookies. The top two corners where the sky blue ink pops has a decent amount of wear, and there's a couple minor print dots, but I think this is just a fantastic copy. About a handful of PSA 7 copies have sold in 2023 thus far, and they go for roughly $4K, trending a touch higher, shade more. We're virtually at that number already with BP, and there's 6 days to go. I'm going to come in here a touch higher than I think you probably suspect. There was a couple numbers that I had in mind. I was debating high 6s, low 7s. I'm going to come in here and go high 7s. I'm going to be at 7,200 on the Pete Rose rookie.
Okay. Look, all your notes are on par with mine. This is a unbelievable. I mean, it's dead nut centered. I mean, it's perfectly centered.
It's perfect.
It's perfect, and its centering is on par with any 9 or 10 out there. Its color, its registration is damn near perfect. The print on there, you have just some small print dots and around Ken's red circle, which is very common in these cards, but none I can really see up in the blue, which is another area where there's a lot of print dots. And the 2 white corners you mentioned, yep, they're there. But all those other things combined with the back centering, that's why it's got the PWCC S sticker on it. The fact that regular 7s sell for around 4K, and I know that historically, on average, PWCC S stickers sell for about 200% of what a non-stickered asset would sell for. I've actually got this at 8,143.
Ooh, we got a little gap. You're coming in higher than me on this one. Okay. I'm a little nervous about that, and I was toying with 6,900 or 7,200. Went with 7,200. So we have a nice little gap here, which we have a nice little gap here, which, isn't, to the listener, won't sound crazy, but for a vintage card, it's actually a decent sized gap. The next card, very interesting. Opposite the last two we talked about, it's the 2019 Panini Noir Black and White John Morant Rookie Laundry Tag Patch Auto. It's out of 5 copies, serial numbered. Extremely thick card, which makes grading a tough proposition. But this Ja Rookie comes with the NBA authentication, which we talked about earlier in the show. That's something innovative that PWCC offers. A lot of variance with this card and John Morant in general right now. Give us your thoughts on this one, Jesse.
Yeah, well, I obviously selected this one because of the hot topic that is John Morant right now. And I know it's going to be tough for us to determine how much these, issues that he's facing are going to affect his collectability and investability short term. Obviously, it's going to hurt short term, but how much is the question? So I've actually seen quite a bit of rallying around John Morant from a lot of the sports media and former players, and I'm on board with it. God knows what I would have done as a young man in my early 20s with the world telling me I'm so great and a boatload of money. I mean, I can only imagine the mistakes that I would have made, let alone under the spotlight that, a professional athlete has underneath them. So, the difficult part about being a celebrity these days is that it's social media. It's that everyone's got their cameras out at all times, and any little slip you do is going to be it's going to be magnified 3x versus what it normally is. And so that for me is a big reason why I actually don't think this is going to affect him as much as you would imagine. And with everything under a microscope, I mean, when's the last time that someone came to you and was like, hey, did you hear about this? And followed up with something positive. It's always negative.
Yes.
So bad news travels 100x more than good news. And I think that's kind of, look, what he did was stupid. Like, don't get it twisted. It was stupid. But let's give the young man a little bit of breath here. Let him learn his lesson. He came out and admitted he was wrong. PR play or authentic, I don't know, but that's where we're at with this. There's a lot of unknowns, but that's why I thought it'd be an interesting card and brand to talk about today. So yeah, the truth is we don't know what this thing's gonna end at. We don't know how much it's gonna affect it. So it's a little bit of a guess in anybody's game. So all of that said, after that rant, we got this card from my side valued at $2,750.
We're in the same ballpark. This to me is interesting because, I watched John Morant at Murray State, followed that situation closely, and by all regards, like a good dude. Now, to your point, there's just so much negative on social media, and typically, like, hatred comes from those always doing worse than you.
Sure.
Negative news, to your point, travels substantially faster. I'm a little concerned about pulling your gun out on kids in a recreational basketball game or a game on the play.
Did we get confirmation if that actually happened or not, or is that just?
I don't think you're going to be able to confirm that is the problem, right? There's a couple guys at the game. I think, after recent actions, it may deter collectors and investors from owning Morant cards. It only takes us, like we say all the time, it takes two, right? Like, what if one of those guys was like, I'm done and over this, right?
Yep.
In the short term, he suspended 6 games. The NBA opened an ongoing investigation to see if Morant was carrying the firearm on team premises, right, in the locker room, on a plane, whatever that might be. So who knows what's potentially coming down the pike there. I would think they're not trying to hinder one of their young and upcoming stars, especially as the playoffs approach. What we do know from this is, if you're in Glendale, Colorado, Shotgun Willie's is apparently a gentleman's establishment good enough to attend twice in 72 hours. So if you're ever there, I guess give it a look-see. As for this John Morant,
shame on Shotgun Willie's for releasing that, by the way. Goodness gracious. Shame on them.
My guess is they
what I don't know, but what
cops got involved?
What a bad look for them if that got leaked by them somehow without having to comply with any kind of law enforcement, because the law enforcement there's no reason to release that photo, right, from a law enforcement perspective. So Shotgun is releasing that. If you're any kind of athlete, celebrity, or anything, or anybody, I'm not stepping foot in that place.
Supposedly lots of Denver Nuggets players and Broncos frequent that establishment. Now, the ladies there said that John Morant was one of their best customers. Apparently blew like $50,000 over those 2 evenings where a lot of the other players did not partake. The hope is, and we're just kind of going off on a tangent here, the hope is that dad who travels with Ja to games, who sits courtside, acts like a father and not a hanger-oner, and starts to guide his son, who's still only 23 years old. And I think that's something that we have to remember here.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think that's actually a big concern of mine, is that his dad does not look like like he takes a step in the fatherly figure direction. And that's just from
what do you say?
Yeah.
Like, when you're on the payroll, it's like, you kind of feel like you can't be father sometimes. And that's needed in this situation. Okay. You're at 2750. I'm going to come in a little bit lower than you. I'll just tell you my actual number was 2480 here. So I think we're in the same ballpark. I saw there is a Noir, obviously a premium brand within Panini. There are a couple tag variants out of 5. There was another one that sold, this being a thick card, it was a PSA 9, sold in like the $4,000 range. I think, with the certain news, I think we're coming in a little bit lower here, both of us, relative to that one.
Yeah.
I actually think you might be good here, but that completes this week of Magic Number. Anything on the way out? Do you feel a little bit better this week in conclusion compared to where we were last week?
Yes. That's as easy as I can put it. Yes.
Okay. I like it. Nice, concise response there. Beautiful. Okay. You ready to move on?
Let's do it.
Damn, that's a ghost. We're going to highlight a card that hasn't sold in more than a year right now, or is serial numbered to less than 100 copies produced. We're going to talk about why this card is significant, maybe in terms of hobbies or language or just the overall rarity of it all, and why it's considered a ghost.
This week's ghost card is really interesting because, as great as Mike Trout does feel like we're at the polarizing part of his career.
Yep.
Is he going to win anything? Is he going to hit some milestones? That's the big question here. And I think
he stay healthy?
Right. I think that sentiment is really interesting. And just being out in LA this past week, going to a couple card shops, hanging out with some guys that know Mike personally. My understanding is he would love to get out of LA.
Interesting.
He's there during season. He loves ripping packs, and that is typically what keeps him busy when he's not playing. As soon as season's over, he heads back east and hangs out with the family, and he's not doing a ton of stuff with cards. But when he's in LA, his off time is spent mostly with cards. Okay. We're going to be talking about the 2009 Bowman Chrome Mike Trout rookie. This is the X-Fractor variant, autograph on card, the serial numbered out of 225. But the key differentiator here, what makes it even more rare, this is a BGS 10 black label. I'll be candid here. I have one. It's 0.5 away from pristine. So, I own this one. I don't want to hype it, but just an iconic card of, the best player over the last decade in Major League Baseball. The WAR is there. The player efficiency, both at the plate and defensively, is there. Again, not sure a ton of milestones will be reached. But, Jesse, I'll give you the floor to talk about this iconic Trout rookie card to prevent the naysayers from yelling I'm pumping my own card here.
Well, let me bump it for you because I agree. Look, this is live right now in our premier auction. It is a 1 of 1. It is actually the only 2009 Bowman Chrome Mike Trout card refractor that is serial numbered to receive a BGS 10 black label. So it is a very special, very unique card. This one, like you mentioned, is out of 225, and I think, with the rarity of this, it's definitely definitely a 6-figure card. How much into the 6 figures is kind of the question. So it's a very important card. It's a very beautiful. It's got this pretty checkerboard. That's what the X-Fractor look is. No different than, if you see any 2009 Topps Chrome X-Fractors in basketball, they look very similar. But it's a pretty card. Being a Pop One black label, black labels are unbelievably popular because they are so hard to obtain, and chances are there's never going to be another one of this. So if you want it, this is your chance to go scoop it up. And your insider info on his love for LA that actually makes this, or lack of love for LA, actually makes this card and Mike Trout a little more intriguing, because I think about, well, here's a massive contract. If that contract is ever going to leave LA, where can it land?
Yep.
And it's only a few teams that, naturally contend for a World Series every year.
Yep.
You're looking at New York's obviously, Boston, hometown Philly boy.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, hometown Philly boy. I mean, they've dropped some dough. So there's a possibility that he could move in the next year or two to a contender towards the end of his career. How amazing would it be to see him perform well in the playoffs? First of all, make the playoffs, and then perform well in the playoffs, let alone win a World Series. I mean, baseball is such a unique sport from a World Series perspective because it takes so much. You can't blame a guy like Mike Trout for not making the World Series with how good his numbers are. His team has just always sucked. That's just the fact. They've been terrible. They've had awful pitching. He's done everything that he can over the last decade, but they've just had a terrible organization, and that's affected, the view of him from a collectability standpoint. Imagine if he was on the Yankees and he put up those numbers.
Oof.
And they won 2 or 3 championships, and he performed even just decent in the playoffs. I mean, he would be in GOAT conversation right now.
Yeah, there's no
doubt. So, it's an unfortunate circumstance, but in PIs, if the rumors you're saying are true, he's played it right. He's always said he loves LA. He wants to be there for the rest of his life. Yada yada yada. But that can't. There's got to be a point in time where, as long as you're a guy that is competitive and likes to win, where I have to imagine someone who's as good as he is likes to win. You kind of got to look yourself in the mirror and go, "Am I going to do it here? And if I'm not going to do it here, how much time do I have left to get out of here and make something happen?" And I think that's where we're at.
Absolutely love this card. I mean, you start to think about it in the important pantheon of just big cards, right? You're thinking, T206 Cobb, you're thinking 52 Mantle, obviously overpopulated, but 89 Griffey, and in the 2000s, this is that card. And I'll be honest with you, I knew it was a black label. I did not know this was the only black label of Mike Trout's Bowman Chrome rookie card, in terms of doesn't matter the parallel, this is the only one.
Right. No, it's not his base issue obviously has some,
yes.
But yeah,
in terms of the colored refractors. Yes.
Correct. Yep.
So
it's very rare.
An absolute ghost, which is, a good pick for this week, obviously.
Well, thanks.
Trading cards and memorabilia have seen incredible growth as an alternative investment. The company leading the growth? PWCC Marketplace. PWCC Marketplace runs the largest weekly auction of authenticated sports cards, Pokemon cards, comic books, video games, and memorabilia in the world. PWCC Marketplace also has more than 65,000 items listed in their fixed price marketplace that you can make an offer on right now. Head over to pwccmarketplace.com and see why they're the best option for buying and selling trading cards, memorabilia, and all of your collectibles. So we doing this or are we doing that? You tell me and we'll tell you. We're going to compare 2 cards right now with similar value that are completely different. Let me give you an example. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you have a vintage Mickey Mantle baseball card worth $30,000. But you also have a modern day Joe Burrow rookie card worth $30,000. Which one would you rather have and why? You tell us, we're going to tell you right now.
another segment of this or that, and iconic is what comes to mind here. Michael Jordan versus the aforementioned T206 Ty Cobb. And I'll be honest, this was a great pick this week from you. Just couldn't have a wider ranging of assets here. The first card is a 1992 Stadium Club Beam Team members only Michael Jordan in Gem Mint 10, and it's going against the 1909 T206 Ty Cobb red portrait with the old mill back in PSA 2.5 good. It does come with the I appeal stamp of approval from PWCC. The floor is yours, kind sir. Tell us which of these cards you'd rather have and discuss each of them.
So the 92 Stadium Club is a card that's near and dear to my heart, and it's likely near and dear to a lot of people's hearts who are maybe in their late 30s to even late 40s that have been in this space. You're well aware of what the 92 Stadium Club is and how hard it was to find a members-only variation of it. And this card sold about a week ago for $9K in a PSA 10. It's only a Pop 67. There's been about 913 graded by PSA, so it only has about a 7% gem rate. It is, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I'd say it is probably top 2 early 90s inserts for Jordan. I mean, it's the card.
It's definitely one that we remember as a kid, and I think you hit that perfectly. Like every 35 to 45-year-old guy, like this was something he was coming after for sure.
Exactly, and it's the GOAT. So I thought that pairing this one up against a card drastically different, 1909 T206 red portrait Cobb, and this one has the old mill back in a 2.5 with a PWCC A sticker. Sold for $8,700 a week ago, so you get a few $100 discount if you were to go with the Cobb. Round corners, which are very common with low-grade PSA examples, a little bit off-center, left to right, but the print on this card is outstanding, and that is what's so attractive to me for these Cobbs, is when you get that vibrant red background and the print is excellent, it makes for a beautiful copy, and that's likely why it got the PWCC A. The old mill back also makes this one interesting. Another reason why it was picked this week. There's only been 98 examples of a red portrait Cobb graded with PSA that have an old mill back, and there have been 2,398 graded in total of all backs with red portrait Cobbs. So that gives you an example of how hard it is to find a red portrait Cobb with an old mill back in general, let alone one that is as pretty as this one that we're talking about now. So all those things considered, the quality of the Cobb combined with the rarity of the back, that makes me pick Cobb this week.
Wow, that's interesting. I think you hit on all of the high-end talking points. The Jordan Beam Team, Pop 67 and PSA 10. The Cobb is a Pop 6 with just 45 higher with the old mill tobacco back. Now, you talked about there being over 2,000 with the red portrait. All backs considered, right? Like you have Piedmont,
Correct.
Sovereign, multiple subjects, a slew of other different tobacco backs. So I think that is important to factor those in properly when making this decision. Certainly the old mill, as you alluded to, under 100 copies graded with PSA, but that's ultimately why I land on the Jordan Beam Team members only, because there are multiple red portraits here, right? And when you have 2,000 plus to choose from, I think that's ultimately what puts me over the top, right? Like when I look at Beam Team members only, like iconic set, to your point, it's still being replicated to this very day by card manufacturers, because as we've kind of hit a couple times, like every 35 to 50 year old remembers this card growing up as a kid, and now they have some discretionary income to own one. It's Jordan, it's a PSA 10, none are going to be higher, right? Classic Jordan dunk pose with the tongue out. The members only insignia is very light. It's right beside Jordan's forearm. It's the differentiator from the members only version compared to the base. You have the laser etching theme. That was something the NBA did in the 90s at games, they would call it the laser light show. Everyone loved it, and that's where this design was ultimately born from. You look at this set in general, Members Only Beam Team was released as a complete set. You could purchase it as a member of top stadium clubs, so you had to be a member. Only 10,000 sets were made. I just don't see the PSA 10 population growing much at all after 30 plus years, especially with how PSA is grading these days. I'm actually going to go opposite here, and I'm stunned by this. I figured you would have been on the Jordan team here. I'm ultimately landing on the Beam Team Jordan.
Interesting. And I just want to make a comment. You said that they're still using that design today, which is true for Beam Team.
Yes.
But they also are for tobacco cards. If you look at Allen Ginter products, some other recent releases of baseball, those cards that are shaped that are, tall and skinny, those are an homage to the tobacco cards of the early 1900s.
Yes, you are right there. This one's battle.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you for picking Jordan. It was a tough call this week, and
it is really tough.
I thought you might go Jordan, but I love the color on that Cobb, and for some reason, I like old mill backs. I can't really put my finger on it. It's just I like the look of them. They look very vintage and old to me, and that's why I went with Cobb.
Yeah, I think it was an absolute coin toss, and current day pricing depicts as such, and so this was a tough debate. I just think that PSA 10 Jordan, yeah, this would be interesting. Hopefully we live this long to be able to come back in like 50 years and be like, who's right or wrong here. But this one's really interesting. Okay, we're going to wrap up the show here. I'll give you the closing words. Tell us anything personal about yourself. Tell us anything that's going on at PWCC. Go for it. The floor is yours, sir.
No one wants to know anything personal. I'm
the weather for the second week in a row.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
Yeah, got a little food poisoning this weekend. I'm on the mend.
Don't get rare meats at the golf course. We'll just put it at that.
No, they're getting a little insight into our pre-recording conversations.
That's all that's needed.
Yeah. No, it was a rough weekend, but we're like I said, gamer, we're here, and I think I'll just kind of talk a little bit more about and reiterate the top of the show about the Mint and how good the education can be at that show. It's also the first show I'll be at since the National back in August. So if you're in the area, stop by and say hi. Drop my name, and I have an office in the back of our booth that I'm usually kind of camped out in, but I'll pop out and say what's up. So I'd love to shake some hands with any listeners of the show and meet you in person. So please, if you are in the area or you want an excuse to go to Vegas, fly into the Mint and come check it out.
Perfect. Back next week.
Make sure you follow Payne on Twitter at Payne Insider. Subscribe to Bet the Board and get notified when new episodes of CardBoard Chat air on Tuesdays. And be sure to stop by PWCCmarketplace.com for all your collecting needs.